There's a handful of people that I went to high school with that grew up with money, old money that is. They've had wealth in their family tree for generations. As a matter of fact, two of them, when added together, they own over 70% of the property in my hometown here in Louisiana. Inherited money is typically termed old money, whereas recently acquired money is known as new money. But there's much more to it than that. These labels not only describe where somebody's wealth came from, but also their spending habits. These are just some of the things that we're going to get into in this video. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Jeff Anzalone, a periodontist that wants to get you out of the rat race ASAP. You can start the process by simply downloading the free passive income guide below this video. So let's start off by asking or answering the question, what exactly is old money? So let's start off with Proverbs 13:22, which states, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. So families described as old money, they basically have wealth passed down and sustained over generation after generation. Typically an old money family, they tend to have a higher social standing and belong to what's called the upper class. Their family name is often synonymous with wealth and prestige. Think about Rockefellers, think about the Vanderbilts. Here's another question. How many generations are actually considered old? Now, even though old money is inherited wealth, it doesn't necessarily mean that all money, all inherited money, is old wealth. Let me explain. Now, more than likely, you've probably heard of Sam Walton and you've probably shopped at a Walmart or a Sam's Club. If so, then you've experienced something that self-made billionaire Sam Walton created back in the 60s. Now, when he died in 1992, he left all of his 4 children roughly $70 billion. 3 of his children, first generation inheritance, are actually still alive, and together they make up one of the wealthiest families here in America. But despite this tremendous inherited wealth, the Walton family, they're not considered old money people. Most social scientists claim that wealth must be sustained through more than 3 generations before being considered old money. I don't know about you, but if I inherited $70 billion, I don't care what you call me. All right, let's move on to this next question. What exactly is new money? Now, if old money is considered acquiring wealth passed down generations before them, then new money is basically used to describe people that simply earn their own wealth. Now, these are also known as first generation millionaires. And some examples are pro athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and some of the up and coming musicians. Now, when you think about people in this category, you think about Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg. Now, these entrepreneurs, they earned a lot of money through innovation and actually creating large corporations. Many of the pro athletes that actually leave high school or college that come from nothing, they're also considered these new money individuals. Unfortunately, sometimes this newfound wealth actually causes them to buy expensive cars, boats, houses. Basically, these things can lead to bankruptcy. So let's talk about some of the key differences between the old money and new money. As we previously discussed, the main difference between the two is the source of the person's wealth. But there are other things that can actually distinguish wealthy families from one another, such as social position, spending habits, and social perception. Now, let's talk about the source of wealth. Now, the easiest way, again, to differentiate between the new and old money is where it came from. So wealth that's been passed down, remember, through generations is considered old money, while newly earned wealth is new money. In the U.S., many of the old money families are descendants of early industrialists. A few examples are Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, and Andrew Carnegie. New money can also be found in celebrities, sports stars, and entrepreneurs. So let's take a look at the social standing and social perception. So the perception of the old money versus new money class is very different. Many old money individuals are elitist up in the northeast part of the U.S. Now, they're able to live in high society areas, think like the Hamptons, Martha's Vineyard, because of their inherited money. They're viewed as educated, refined, respectable, and wealthy. Typically, they make efforts to actually avoid the spotlight unless it involves something to help them grow their wealth. For example, Paris Hilton has been known to smartly use the media to help build her brand in the past. On the other hand, many times these new money people have a rags to riches story and may have grown up poor or even come from middle class families. Even though a family with new money might be just as wealthy as somebody with old money, they still might not be considered upper class as an old money family. Now, let's take a look at the spending habits. Now, one of the biggest differences between new versus old money has to do with the spending habits and lifestyle. Typically, not always, but typically families with old money, they tend to be more on the frugal side. They understand that their wealth has been passed down from generation to generation, and technically it isn't their money that they've earned. Now it's up to them, because it's been passed down, to keep this trend going. Now, this group of people, it really reminds me of many of those portrayed in the book, The Millionaire Next Door, which actually describes how the typical millionaire in the U.S. lives, which really isn't all that flashy. That's not to say that families with old money don't spend on luxury items. It's understandable that they live in high-priced homes, they drive nice cars, and purchase really nice clothing. But they tend to spend more practically, and they view large purchases as investments rather than splurges. On the other hand, new money families, they haven't had this access to this generational wealth. They're much more inclined to consider the money theirs to live on versus theirs to pass down to future generations. I know my wife has this type of thinking as well. Now, as you can imagine, this group is much more likely to have a more frivolous spending, including expensive homes, extravagant designer clothing, and fancy cars. Therefore, many times you'll see pro athletes such as Mike Tyson in the past lose hundreds of millions of dollars over a short period of time. Now, spending money for new money people, spending money for new money people is typically primarily about an experience, while old money, they actually primarily see this as a means of investment, even if the purchase item is personal use. All right, now that we discussed new and old money, which is better? Now, if you're somebody that was born into poverty and you busted your butt by outworking everybody else to build your wealth and obtain success, then you wouldn't have any issue with having a new money label. As a matter of fact, most people would be more than happy to have new money when you consider that 10% of the Americans own over 70% of the overall wealth, while millions spend their entire lives in poverty. Some of those born into old money may actually look down on those that obtain new wealth. It all boils down to this. It all boils down to how you were raised to think about money. If you were somebody that was taught that money is a tool and should be used to help those in need, then you may not have any issue when it comes to new money versus old money. On the other hand, if you were raised in a very kind of a snobby family that avoided associating with people in the lower class, then you may have a more negative view of those that have new money. I believe it really doesn't matter how you've obtained your wealth, as long as you just simply treat others equally. My parents are hardworking, blue-collar people that gave my brother and I typically all that we needed. We never wanted for anything. And we were always happy and content during our childhood. So for me, money is nothing more than a tool for time freedom. And what you do with it to improve your life and the lives of the others is really the only thing that matters. So studies show that roughly 70% of the wealthiest people are self-made, and they actually fall into the new money category. This leaves around about 30% that have inherited their wealth. So it goes with saying, more than likely, that you're probably going to be falling into this new money category. Now, by learning the similarities and differences of each group, you'll now be able to start to learn how to live life and make plans once you start getting this wealth, getting more wealthy down the road. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the most important things to focus on is how you think about money. So what I want you to do now is check out this video over here where I'm going to discuss what having the saving money mindset is actually doing to your wealth. I'll see you over here.